Brilliant. So welcome everyone to our first session on for the LGBTQ plus History Month. Today's session is going to be about creating pride. I'm really happy to have a number of different panelists with us today. If I just introduce them, it'll be David Shaw. Give us a little bit of a wave there, should be spotlighted for you. Tahir from the Stronger Communities team in the Bradford Council, and then Finn Thornburn from Equity Partnership. Give a little bit of a thought. And I've also got wonderfully Shirley Cogden, who's the Vice Chancellor for the University of Bradford, to open the session for us. But before I do that, if I just quickly explain who I am and what my role is, and a little bit about what we've been trying to do over the last couple of programmes. So my name is Zara Niazi. I'm the Strategic Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Lead, and I have a very unique role in the sense that I have been appointed by the Wellbeing Board. So it's a kind of a match-funded role by a number of different partners in our district. We're really passionate, of course, about diversity, and we want to make sure that we're really amplifying these particular days and months of significance because they're important to us as a workforce. And what we have agreed as a place is that we will involve a lot of our organisations across the district to put on particular events and sessions to really highlight the importance of these particular days and months. So I'm really proud that we're doing our second programme. So our first programme was around Race Equality Week, which we had a really fantastic turnout and participation and engagement with. And now we're kind of focusing on the LGBTQ plus History Month. I'm going to pass off to Shirley, who's going to just open and welcome you all. We felt it was really important that all of these sessions should have senior leaders opening the session because that is important, and I think they set a particular precedence as well. So I'll pass off to Shirley now, and then we'll go into the session itself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Zara, and welcome everybody to the session Creating Pride. I wanted to start off by just saying something about the importance of leadership in the space of equality, diversity and inclusion. And particularly when we're here today thinking about the experiences that the LGBTQ community are facing, how their lived experiences, and why these sessions are so important in helping leaders particularly to understand the lived experiences. Because if senior leaders across our district aren't in connection with the communities that we serve, in designing policies and taking action to make everybody feel included, and to really mean it and deliver on it when we say that diversity is a source of strength, and that collectively what we're trying to do in Bradford is to create an atmosphere of inclusion where people can be themselves. And whilst it's also important for us to reflect on the intersectionality associated with equality and diversity, it's really important that we also spend the time to think about the particular areas of difference. And this is why creating pride is so important. And I actually think the word pride is so apt when we think about LGBTQ people, because it is about having pride in who we are and having pride in others who are different for many different reasons. I think it's really important as well when we think about leaders. This is why the system leadership is important across Bradford and Keighley and beyond in Craven as well, is that we really have to be more deliberate in what we do when we work together. From a University of Bradford's perspective, our vision is a world of equality, of opportunity, where people can and want to make a difference. And we know that people will only be able to make a difference in their working life, in their personal life, in their work with their friends, their colleagues, their communities, if they feel included. So I'm sure that during the panel in the next, I don't know how long we've got on the panel, but people will be sharing their experiences of how they are trying to support each other and themselves in their various organisations to reflect, to learn, to act, to not be a bystander, to be deliberate, and more importantly, to care. So I think that's all I really wanted to say. And I think I'm passing on now to David Shaw, who's going to be chairing the panel. And it's really wonderful, David, that you've been taking the time to champion this cause, work yourself, and to bring people together to talk about their lives and reflections of our LGBT community.
Well, thank you very much, Shirley. What we're going to do is we're going to, I'll introduce the panel, and I'll introduce myself in a minute, and then we're going to think about what is Pride and what is it not, and what form can a Pride take, and the whole of the years, because it's not just June and February months. What takes place, what can take place, how do we measure what we do and our goals, and then we can talk about what Pride events there are around our districts and how they work and the different forms, because they are quite different. So we've got, we've got Leeds, Happy Valley, which is Hepton Bridge. We've got Bradford, Keighley, Ilkley, Harrogate, York, and obviously, further afield we've got London. So, and how to organise a Pride and what elements are there, and because it's not easy, and looking at all the different elements as much as we can, and make go through the agenda of a Pride meeting, but that, see how far we get. So I'm David Shaw. I think I'm probably a classic example. I knew I was gay at the age of 7. I was interviewed by John Waits on Channel 4 about coming out later in life, because I was involved in churches and in church choirs. I was on the choir of Emmerdale Farm at one point, and I've sung in cathedral choirs, and I've been Scout leader. I was National Commissioner of the Scouts, but I felt I needed to be married, to be accepted. That was what I thought I needed to. I didn't think my parents would accept it easily. I was wrong about that. So I was married for 30 years to a woman. I have 2 children and a grandson, and I wouldn't have missed that for the world. But I decided about 6-7 years ago that I didn't want to live the life I had led. My father was dying, and their love of my mother and father, I wanted to be like that, to be honest. And I told my mother, or she asked me, and that was the way that it happened, that she said, "Oh, are you gay?" or something, because she knew I was unhappy. And that was the sort of breakthrough for me, that I thought then I could do it. I worked for the royal family for 20 years, so I've had an amazing life, and I've been very, very fortunate. So I felt I wanted to do something for the LGBT community, and that's not easy to find to make a difference. So in the end, I was asked to chair Keighley Pride. I didn't know a lot about Keighley. I lived in Ilkley as a youngster, and then moved away to Windsor, and then I came back. And that was a big learning curve, I'll be honest, to get involved. If you ever get a chance to see the film Bros, BROS, that's come out recently, please do, because it's about organising a museum in New York, and it's all the different elements of the LGBT community. And believe me, it reminds me of how hard it is actually to get on and to understand each other, even within our own community. And that is a big issue, a very big issue in itself, that we actually find it difficult to get on, and we actually are quite horrid on occasions, and not very understanding. So we've got to get ourselves. You've got to love yourself to love others, as RuPaul says, and that's quite true. So that tells you a little bit myself. That then I organised Ilkley Pride for the first time last year, and Liz, who's on the call, the ward officer, was amazingly helpful, and Bradford Council. We couldn't have done it without them, and Ilkley Town Council, and the same with Keighley. So So if you want to introduce yourself, perhaps we'll start with Finn, who works for Bradford Equity, who done some amazing work. And I think that Bradford Equity is an example of how it was the common ground in the Bradford area. Well, that was through hate crime, and everybody can't disagree with that, whoever you are. So that was the starting point, and then from there came the training in diversity and inclusion, and of course the LGBT work. So I looked at that model, and we've done some work in that in Keighley, because that is the one thing that people can agree with. I hope that helps, Finn, to introduce yourself anyway.
Thanks, David. Yeah, my name is Finn Thorburn, and I have recently rejoined the staff at Equity Partnership, which is an LGBT charity based here in Bradford, and has been since, oh gosh, I can never remember what year it formally started, but it was in the 2000s, but pre-2010, which I know is a big window, but somewhere in there, Equity started, and there's been within Bradford ever since. And we have a community centre where we have a lot of our peer support groups meeting, and we have all the youth groups meeting, and to keep hold of a community centre since Bradford's since the charity formed has been no mean feat, and I think is something that is testament to the people of Bradford, as well as the hard work that the staff put in, because Leeds can't say the same. I don't know of a community centre that's survived more than 18 months when it's LGBT focused. So the fact that Bradford's had one for at least 15 years now is pretty good going. I'll just a little bit about my role. I'm currently there employed to deliver training, so whether that's LGBTQ plus training, or just trans awareness training, or LGBTQ plus youth and mental health, or domestic abuse and LGBT people. I cover a whole range of topics, because as we know, we don't talk about a lot of this stuff enough, and the more that we talk about it, the easier it is to break down some of those barriers and the stigmas, which also feeds into Pride and the message that Pride can send out. Do we need to know anything else, David?
No, I don't think so. That sets the scene. So Tahir, would you like to say, because you used to work for Equity Partnership as well, but you now work for Bradford Council.
So hello everyone, my name is Tahir Shah. I'm a partnership and engagement officer as part of the Stronger Communities team. Prior to my role within the council, I used to work for the Equity Partnership, and I was a partnership officer in the charity. Prior to that, I have a background in human resources and business. I went through a major shift in sort of like the mid 2015, 2016, where I figured what I wanted to do was not work in such a heavily corporate environment, but really work with charities and grassroots organizations. And after doing a lot of research and a lot of sort of my own investigation, I found that in Bradford, the LGBTQ plus community were the most marginalized and often the most oppressed in a way. And they went through all kinds of difficulties and issues, and I figured I wanted to make my work, my career, something more focused around communities and helping to build up spaces that were a safe space, which is what the Equity Partnership is. So that's really my background and the kind of work that I've done. More recently now, I'm working closer again with communities, mainly focused around Keighley area, but I have knowledge and experience of working closely with the LGBTQ plus community and understanding what issues they have and the kinds of problems that they go through, specifically to do with Bradford and the wider district.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just pick up one thing Finn said. I mean, I have done some work regarding community centres in Leeds, especially because we were looking at that as a centre, and I spoke to Manchester LGBTQ Foundation, who started a lot of this. And a community centre, as Finn says, in Bradford has remained, and that is quite unique. There isn't one in Leeds. Manchester's did have one, and then it's folded, and then it may start again. So that is quite an achievement, and I believe it is a very important element and something to have. It's not an easy thing, because obviously there's usually lots of demands for centres, and obviously fitting people in and in a safe space. But it is something to think about. Leeds is very disjointed in lots of ways, and Bradford has been much more joined together. So we should be very proud of that, and the Equity Partnership and Bradford Council enabled that to happen. You know, sadly Leeds hasn't really got that, although MESMAT works very hard. It is still very disjointed. I'll throw that in. So what is pride? Well, that's a good question. Does anybody want to say what they think pride is or is not? Would anybody like to throw in what they feel pride is? Do speak up. Would anybody like to comment?
Well, is pride, pride is about having pride in who you are, what you are, and your chosen, whatever your sexuality, and it's having pride in that, in you and your choices in life.
Yes, absolutely, definite. I think that we ran a schools project in Ilkley and Keighley regarding flags, and one of the things was, you know, what makes you individual, what makes you you, and how do you express that? And I think it's accepting people for whoever they are in any different forms. That can be very tough in itself, but I think that that for me, that is what it is. I mean, one of the greatest examples for me is Keighley Cougars rugby, where we all go to a pride match, and it doesn't matter who we are, we just go and watch a match together and we enjoy ourselves. Does anybody else want to comment about what pride is not, or what pride is?
David, you got a couple of comments in the chat as well.
Okay.
So Nick says it's taking pride in being yourself. Sophie's there says it's a celebration of the LGBTQ plus community. Damien says he's described pride as being unashamed of your whole being. Jennifer says it means that I don't need to feel ashamed for being what I am and for being proud of being out.
Thank you, they're marvellous. Yeah, I mean, I see pride actually as celebration and education. That's one of our strap lines. I do like that. That we need to educate and celebrate. What I don't see it as, and people may disagree with this, I don't see it as political, okay, in a big way. Okay, it is a demonstration in a way, it's a showing of solidarity, but it is not, in my view, an excuse for it to be political. Nor is it an excuse for jumping on the bandwagon that one party is against one thing, another one is not. That is not helpful in my view, and that can dominate a conversation or cause real arguments. And again, it goes back to training and diversity and being inclusive. I mean, I use an example, and I will use an example here, is that my own sitting MP, Robbie Moore, is a Conservative. That does not make him homophobic nor transphobic, but he has been accused of that because obviously some of his party appeared to be that. He has been supportive in everything we've done, but he has had a lot of abuse, and we need to discover before we jump to conclusions why you know, comments are made. We jump to conclusions, which is a bit unfair. I've seen no evidence of that, and that is something that I stamp out a bit. But that's because I don't want pride to become, you know, political from either parties or an excuse to promote any party or politics. Anyway, that's only my view. Does anybody else want to comment on any of those things, or put it in the chat if Zara wants to read that out? If not, we'll move on.
I do have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course you can. Of course.
Yeah. How about cases where, really against some parts of the community's consent, some key aspects about equality can be turned into a political issue? You know, so a particular party's agenda, for instance, that might overwhelmingly be considered discriminatory for a large section of that community. Concerns me that we might have to just be quiet simply because it's turned into a political thing as opposed to just an education thing.
No, I mean, I think it's a fair comment. I mean, I think we have to note when that happens and discuss it carefully, and sometimes we do have to say, well, you know, those policies are against you know, equality, etc., or diversity, and we need to comment. I think that my view is that it can't dominate things all the time, and that can happen. But you are right. I think that when obviously there are things that go against equality and inclusion, and we can see that, then there's no reason to comment. We can't comment because of course we can't. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a very interesting discussion, actually, having that angle. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Okay, so what form can a pride take? Well, there are many events during the year, and I think that, you know, educational events. I mean, I give you an example. I mean, the flag event, the flag project in Keighley started in Keighley. So a flag project was small sewing bits of cloth done by all kinds of organisations, placed on a great big flag and then flown at the event and brought to the attention of everybody. And it's flown over the buildings and been flown over Bradford Town Hall and Keighley. And that is about young people and anybody sort of expressing themselves. And then there were zines, stories written about their experiences. I did one. As it happens, I'll just show you. Is it on my wall here? There's a picture of Danger Mouse and Penfold, and that was what my partner and I called each other, and so that was significant for me when we met. And I wrote about that in a little zine. I didn't even know what a zine was actually, but it was a booklet of stories about how we feel about ourselves and what is important. So that flag project went on and took many months. All the schools took part in Keighley and Ilkley and produced the flag. So there's an example of, you know, a pride project. It's not about one day or a party or a celebration. So we have, as we know, parades. So the parade is important, I think, to show solidarity. So Leeds is probably the best example. 10,000 people in a parade and all the different organisations showing solidarity. In a big city, it's much easier. We join Ilkley Carnival because it's already taking place and closing the roads, and organising that is quite difficult. But Leeds is a great example where all the businesses show support for their LGBT groups. So Leeds City Council will obviously have their group and all the big employers, and they will parade and the banners and get waved at by the 60,000 people who attend. And that is an important part of Pride, to be public, okay, in my view. So that's one element. And obviously the training and education and sports is important. So what else do we think a Pride form of a Pride event could take place? Anybody want to comment about any other examples that they've seen that work? Is there anything in the chat you want us to think about? Or what works great? What works well? I mean, that you've been to?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think the Pride, for me, that's worked well, is especially for young people. It's give young people a safe space to have a voice and to be recognised for who they are, whereas in the past that might not have been an opportunity for them to do that. So it's like it creates new opportunities, I think, for people coming forward. The other thing for me is that it also brings together different people from the LGBTQ community, regardless, because you don't know everything about everybody and everybody's experiences are different. And by actually meeting together in safe spaces, the education's important, but you also learn about each other as well, and different language. And what I've come across is that sometimes people have been, oh, can I say this or can I not say that? Is it right? Is it not? And it's been in that safe space where if you do say something wrong, you can sort of be, find out more information about it, and you build your own knowledge that way. So I think Pride has other things as well as the events for me.
Sarah, can you read out what's in the chat? I can't really see it, and perhaps we could are we able to keep the chat element and sort of all the bits. Can we sort of cut and paste and so we have that? Do you want to read out what's being said,
Yeah,
Sarah,
sure.
please?
So we've got a comment from Craig who says, Happy Valley Pride Events Picnic in Hebden is a really inclusive event for all of the local community, and it offers a bit of an alternative to the standard Pride Parade events. So that's a comment from Jennifer. Says engagement between advocates of the LGBTQ plus community and local business people and elected representatives really helps to advance the EDI agenda generally. The comment there. And back to Craig again, I think, says Halifax Pride has really grown over the last couple of years with large numbers attending the main event last year. The thing that I liked about it was that it was a whole community celebration of Pride.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, Halifax was held at the Peace Hall last year, and there were 40,000 people, 10,000 at any one time, which is big numbers. And then, I mean, it was the it wasn't Halifax Pride, it was whatever it's called, the area. Sorry, my memory's not good. And it was great to see that. I'd like to just touch on the youth element, and we were very fortunate in Ilkley. We didn't have that advantage in Keighley, that we worked very close with Ilkley Grammar School, which have a couple of hundred LGBT students. So they have an ambassador which sits on our committee, and they linked very much with the school. And the assistant head teacher for diversity was very involved. So we asked that group what did they want to see at Pride, and we got that, and we ran what they wanted for us. A bit of karaoke, a bit of safe space, and obviously information on various organisations, some face painting, some decoration of cakes, some disco, etc. So we just got the feedback what they wanted. So it was really good. Businesses, linking with businesses is vital. I chair the business forum in Ilkley, so that's a real advantage for me. So I know the businesses really well. I'm the bid. I don't know that as well in Keighley, and that shows the difference. We had the launch of Keighley and Ilkley Pride in January recently, and I spoke about the differences between the two communities. And basically, it's better if you're from the community that you're working with, and you know the community well, and you know the businesses. Now, Keighley Cougars have achieved that because they're a local rugby league side and very heavily involved in the community. It doesn't matter who you are, you can go and watch the rugby. And they've got a lot of sponsors, and they have got a lot of contacts with the businesses, which is really important. We have that advantage in Ilkley. So at the Pride launch in January, we had lots and lots of businesses who were interested. And it's interesting that we find out and discover that lots of the businesses, especially the hospitality, nearly 50% of their staff are LGBT, which is very high. And so we need to link with those businesses in our town to come together and host events in the different event venues, which we will do, and they're very keen to do that. And again, that breaks down barriers, and again, that their staff feel much more included and valued, which is really important. Betties are a very big promoter of diversity and inclusion, which is obviously very helpful. So there's various elements and purposes that we want to achieve, and I mean, education is one, mixing of everybody together and feeling good about each other. Safe spaces is another, as Liz has mentioned. So we all make mistakes. My goodness, I've made enough mistakes. I think that Liz's comment is really important, that, for instance, when I first started this journey, I went to a number of older LGBT groups in Leeds, and we started one here in Ilkley a long time ago. I had no experience of transgender, nor did I had experience of a man dressing up as a woman, or whatever it is, in all the different forms, and it's quite complex. I've learned that. But if you sit down with a person and they explain that actually they feel they were not born as a man but as a woman, and they feel that somehow inside them they need to do that, but that takes a lot of guts and determination. To listen to them, that is quite heart-wrenching, and to listen to how they feel about who they are is the only way to really appreciate how they feel. Because I'm a gay man and I love men, but I'm not into women particularly. Well, sexually I'm not. And therefore I can't relate. I don't want to change from being a man to a woman. So I don't have that feeling. I don't understand that. And the only way is to talk to others to appreciate that. And when we formed Ilkley Pride, I was amazed. I had 6 parents saying, can my young people come because they're trans at the age of 11? And we had the same with the upper school. And they as parents want to support their young people in any way they can. I mean, unless you were in that position, you couldn't really tell what it was like. And that is incredibly difficult. So the more we listen, and then we had Zoom meetings about, we had various celebrities. One of the people was the boxing promoter who trans from man to a woman. I mean, he was very controversial. He stood as mayor of London, Maloney. But he spoke about the wrestling in his whole life about being wanting to be a woman. But he wasn't even sure himself, even in his 60s, actually, whether he felt gay or felt he wanted to sleep with a man or a woman. He was still unsure. And so that was another interesting element for him. He knew he wanted to be a woman. He knew he wanted to dress as a woman and be as a woman, but he didn't know about the sexual element. And even at that point, he didn't. And so many young people find it, perhaps never know what they really want.
David, can I just jump in?
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? You're talking about Kelly Maloney, so can we use the correct pronouns for her, please? Can we call her she and her rather than he and him? I think that's really important that we can respect people's life and get their pronouns right. And as Jennifer just put in the chat, there's a big difference, which I know you were trying to highlight, between sexual orientation and gender identity. And one of my other hats when I'm not working equity is I'm a trans youth worker. I work with trans youth, right? So the youngest that I'm working with at the moment is 7, right through to 30-year-olds. And the joy that they get from being able to participate in Pride and to feel valued as part of Pride is massive. So yeah. And yeah, so I think you just used a little bit of clumsy language with how you talked about Kelly's journey. So I just wanted to jump in before we got really into sticky.
No problems at all. I mean, there's an example of, I'm trying to be careful, but I don't know the right pronouns, etc. And we all do it to a certain extent. Not everybody, but I do it a lot. And I apologise, but that's me. Again, I need to understand more, and I fully understand that. And it's a hard journey. And thank you, Finn, for pointing that out. It is a tough one. It's tough to understand, and it's tough to get the terminology right. But for as Finn says, for a lot of people, that's really important for them, and therefore we need to be sensitive. And as Finn says, it is important that we get lots of people come to Pride who are young and feel safe and secure, and they can be themselves, and that's what it's about. Okay, so the prides that we have in the area. So we have Bradford, Keighley and Ilkley. Okay, very different events. Bradford's been going the longest, obviously, and it's been run by Leon, I believe, for quite a while. And he's moved away, so I don't know what is happening about Bradford Pride this year. Leon linked with me last year, and so it meant that it wasn't on the same day. Volunteers from Keighley and Ilkley went over and helped with Bradford, and they were short of volunteers. There were staff from the council obviously helping, and the parade didn't take place for various reasons, because you have to plan a parade way in advance. You have to do a lot of risk assessments. And you have to, obviously work with the powers that be to make sure everything is covered. And that's quite time consuming. And then the Pride event itself was quite simple. So the stalls around the fountain, youth groups, community groups, there was a safe space and a simple stage with lots of acts from usually Candy's nightclub, mostly drag acts. And it was well attended, especially by young people. So that was Bradford's. Ilkley was quite different in the sense it was indoor. Bradford's was outdoor. and was very full of families and young people, and a lot of work on education in the afternoon. There were acts obviously as well, but there was different forms of acts. But lots of education about different elements of LGBT and different things for young people to do. And it was involved with the Scouts and the Guides and other youth groups. And less emphasis on really just listening to acts and celebrating. The evening we did more of the celebration. But we were very keen to involve the young people, and we did, and we were overwhelmed with the numbers that came, and they chose to come, as the Mayor of Ilkley said. If we go to Keighley, Keighley's started off inside at Central Hall. Liz was involved in that, and that was a pretty successful event, and again was about education and celebration. Then there was online, and then it was an event at to try and mirror Hebden Bridges, really, just a picnic in the park at Cliff Castle. Fortunately, it rained a bit, so we were lucky to be able to go inside Cliff Castle, which was an amazing experience to be able to perform in there. And but it was a tough time just after COVID. But security was dealt with by the staff at Cliff Castle, which was really helpful and reduced the cost tremendously. Harrogates have a lovely pride, may happen this year in the Valley Gardens, etc., and really similar. They have a parade and acts, etc. So Hebden Bridge for Happy Valley Pride is really successful, but it is very female orientated because obviously it is the lesbian capital of Europe. So, you know, I've been to it, but it is very female orientated, which is understandable because it reflects the community. And I make that comment because obviously, you know, that is fact that it is very female orientated. So there are all different elements to reflect the community. So organising a pride takes a lot of effort and funding. I mean, Bradford's cost £30,000. So did Skipton's, run by Skipton Town Council. That's a lot of money to find and a lot of money to be responsible for, and to obviously get all the permissions and the volunteers. I mean, we had 100 volunteers at Ilkley. Bradford, and this is not an exaggeration, apart from the two main people, they had 2 volunteers who were 2 students at Bradford University. If I hadn't brought my 6 or 8, I think 8 from Ilkley and Keighley, they would have struggled. Now there were staff from Bradford Council with help with gazebos, and obviously the stewarding was done by a professional team, which cost a lot of money, I suspected. But I throw that in, that without volunteers, it's tough. And also for volunteers to come forward, I found that it's vital, because for those 100 volunteers who are from all types of backgrounds and communities, for them to experience and support a pride is a really important element in itself. So you do need to find volunteers, because they get as much out of it as the people attending. And in fact, they learn lots. So that element is key for me. So the round table to be involved, Rotary to be involved, the Scouts, the Guides, other people who are straight in most places, but for them to appreciate what we are like and what we enjoy and how we work and tick, and that's a difficult one because we're all different, is really important. So you have to start early, book acts very early for prize. We booked ours last September and took that commitment because we made some money from Ilkley, so we had that ability to take the risk. But if to book acts, you need to book it really early. And then we had a launch recently in Ilkley to get a lot of businesses involved with sponsorship and funding, because we want to wash our faces and we don't want to rely on grants. So we did that in January, and that was very, very successful. We had 150 people attended that, again beyond all expectations. Security is important, and Skipton's was the newest, and obviously theirs cost a lot because they wanted to make sure it was safe, secure, staging outside and lighting and whatever. Bradford, I don't know what plans there are for Bradford. We may find out in a minute, but certainly it is expensive, and a big commitment. So somebody would have to organise that, and somebody would have to take that responsibility. And we thank Leon for doing that for a number of years, and with Laura, who's connected to the Fringe. But I don't know what is going to happen. So if you want a Pride in Bradford, a group of people would need to come together, and the council, I'm sure, would support that. Do we know if there's any plans for Bradford, Finn?
So historically, Bradford Pride has been organised by an independent group of individuals who have come together because they recognise the importance for it. And then the committee was headed by Leon last year. The current committee who organised last year have said we've reached our limit because, as you've described, David, it is quite a massive job and it takes a lot of time and effort. So I believe that Equity is stepping in to help organise this year's Pride. I don't have the details. Becky, the manager for Equity, does, but I do know that there is conversations happening. There's stuff already going out there, but Equity will absorb the sort of organising maintenance type stuff for this year. And as you said, we need to do better with volunteers. Like, Pride doesn't happen without volunteers, and yeah, so we absolutely need people to volunteer who want to get involved in whatever way they can, whether that's on the day or beforehand. I'm just doing a little plug now, please. Anyone get in contact with Becky at Equity Partnership. All hands gratefully received.
Okay, just a minute. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. There, I'm back. Yeah, Zara, are you copying all the chat? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and I think that you know, it's not something to take on lightly. I've been asked by Bingley and Saltaire. I went to the Saltaire Queer group on Saturday to their event. Could they organise a Pride in Bingley? Well, yeah, they can, but it's certainly something that's not to be done lightly and takes a lot of organisation, and it takes over, actually, to a certain extent. I mean, Leon must have worked very hard with Laura. So you would need a team of people, and from the community of Bradford. Ilkley and Keighley would certainly help with volunteers, and I could give a little help, but not lots, I'll be honest. I can't really take anything more on. Would anybody else like to comment about their experiences of Bradford Pride, and perhaps whether they'd like to see things improved or different? Has anybody been to Bradford Pride?
I'd like to say a few things. Last year, obviously, I was working with the Equity Partnership, and rightly mentioned, like, Pride was a big challenge. You know, so many things that should have happened earlier didn't, and for one reason or another, things worked out in the end. And you're right, David, like, volunteers are massively valued. I think for us, it's a case of just making sure that, and this is conversations that I'm having with different departments within the council, to make sure that support is there and it's ongoing. And I think communication is really, really important. I think we've seen more recently the impact that things, from a wider perspective, people often look at the council and ask, what are they doing to make things happen? And often it's a case of us as a council, and I'm speaking on behalf as someone from the Stronger Communities team, looking to organisations and seeing what support they can give. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a big event that they put on in the city centre, especially now where funding is really, really strict, and we don't necessarily have the kinds of money available that we did have a few years ago. The cost of living and things are going up, so it's a case of doing something rather than nothing, even if it's a small party or a small event at individual locations, you know, community centres, that sort of thing. At least that way they are recognising Pride and they are a part of it without having to fork out thousands of thousands to put on an event, you know, just for the sake of doing it. And I think often those kinds of things are more meaningful. You know, members of the community, when they When they go to those sort of events and that happen locally, they learn a lot more than having to travel into the city centre and see a bunch of stalls and acts on a stage, that sort of thing. So it's about shifting our narrative in terms of what pride means to us as individuals and looking at that internally. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to share.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's interesting that Ilkley Pride, it will reach capacity at the King's Hall and Winter Gardens. And one of the things that I'm very keen about is for lots of businesses and groups to host things on the same day so that they can go. So there is an LGBT bar, the Gin Lounge, which will host things. There's the ticket office, there's the station, there's Banyan, there's the Black Hat, there's Wetherspoons, whose staff are very heavily LGBT, and they'll all host things, and then we need to challenge them to do things, and Brook Street Deli and others, so that they can go to these safe spaces and they can get involved. And you're right to hear that, you know, and over Bradford, even if people show the flags, I mean, we were very fortunate that the bid in Ilkley supplied flags, the progress flags, to all businesses, the 150 in the middle, and so Ilkley was absolutely change rainbow, well, progress flags, and we had banners all over Brook Street and the Grove because businesses had paid for that. And Channel 4 came, and we were on the Breakfast TV with Lorraine, and you know, Ilkley did turn rainbow, and that was beyond all expectations. And actually for Keighley, we got some flags in the middle on Cavendish Street for the first time, and that was really achievement. And we had an after party at the Cavendish, which is quite a tough pub in the middle, and they wanted that, and it was really successful. And that was really in a tough part of Keighley, which you wouldn't have expected it to be that accepted, but it was. So never assume anything. Most people are actually supportive of being supporting people to be whoever they are. It is not about being gay. It is about whoever you are in your different forms, and that's what we've got to promote. So I hope that people from Bradford Council, and it looks like from the chat that the LGBT group will support equity. I think looks like from the chat. I'll pick that up quickly, and so I hope that you're able to do something. But I think it doesn't necessarily have to be what's gone before. You know, I think it could be in all different formats, couldn't it? Costing is an issue. We're all up against it, and you know, 30,000 is a lot of money. Ilkley cost about 7, and 3 of that was the hire of the venue. So we did it on a fairly small budget, and I'm determined that we don't need to spend lots of money for it to be successful. And Keighley, even less, but we do get Keighley Cougars ground for nothing. But setting up stalls and having stalls and inviting people is relatively easy and cheap. And actually the entertainment doesn't have to be expensive at all. Obviously staging and lighting and security is the big element, but that you'd have to look at that carefully. Anyway, I hope that helps. Would anybody else like to comment? Sorry, I'm a terrible talker, but you'll have to get used to me. But sometimes I say the wrong thing, so I apologise. But I am what I am. Would anybody like to make any comments? Anybody wants to say anything? You're welcome to do that. I mean, there's lots of comments in the chat, and I know Zara will send that to me, and we can look at that. But I hope it's been useful, and I hope it's been educational in that sense. I mean, I feel that, as Liz says, that to work with young people, because that's important, that they are educated, they are understanding, and they feel safe and secure, that they can be themselves. Because, you know, obviously the generations, my generation and the older generations, perhaps didn't feel that, and we need to change that. So that's a big element for them to be involved, for them to be ask what they want and how they see things, and we work from that. And obviously to involve businesses and to be trained and appreciate about unconscious bias, how we immediately jump to conclusions about if you're a man or a woman, or you're coloured, or you're gay, or you're whatever. We assume so much before we open this. Well, and I sometimes do it badly, sorry. But, you know, for everybody to undertake that training would actually help people tremendously. And I know Bradford Active have done marvellously in that over the years, and I think that has helped Bradford tremendously. It's never easy to understand each other, and I hope today has helped. But anybody, Finn or Tia, do you want to say anything more? I'm sorry if I've made a few blots.
Just that I think that, you know, sessions like this are really important, and I think it needs to happen more often. So thank you to Zara for organising it and putting it on, and thank you for all the attendees for coming and listening to us. Saying there's 5 minutes left, so I'm hoping that everyone was able to take something away from this. And as ever, if there's any questions, you know, either reach out to myself or Finn or David, and hopefully we can answer them. But yeah.
Are there any questions? Anybody wants to ask a question? Are we all okay?
I just want to say thank this. I'm new to West Yorkshire, and I came from South Wales originally, and I was, you know, obviously as a queer person, obviously involved in Pride activities down there, and so it's great to meet people involved in Pride in West Yorkshire, and I look forward to meeting you all again later on in the year or ongoing. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Anybody else? Is there anybody else would like to say anything? Okay, well, I think that if not, Sarah, we can come to a conclusion, and we're 4 minutes to go, so that's okay. We're on time, and I'm very passionate about being a gay man and being myself, and you know, helping others to discover themselves and be themselves, and that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to organise the Prides, to help that to happen. I had a wonderful schooling actually here in Ilkley, and I wasn't bullied, and I was a bit camp, and my nickname was Puff Boy. Don't laugh at that by some, but perhaps that helped. I don't know, that people tease me. The rugby players are always really supportive, and I wasn't bullied. But I hear there is a lot of bullying still goes on, and so that saddens me. I didn't incur that.
Can I just, as a, I don't know how to start this, a young family member coming out as gay, and David, you talking there about the he and she, I definitely get things wrong because it was very new to me, and it's still very new to me, and learning is something I have to do, because accepting that person is very important to me. But we don't, you know, like, we don't say things unintentionally or intentionally. It's a learning curve, and I think we all need to learn, and I'm still learning, and just find it hard sometimes, probably like everybody else, that have I said the wrong thing? Should I have said that? And it's never intentional, whatever's said. You know, it's learning.
Very true indeed. I mean, it is hard. It's sometimes treading on eggshells, but I want to get it right, but it isn't easy. Now, you know, I mean, I just want people to feel comfortable, and I want to try and understand how they from their side of the fence. And it is an ongoing learning. It's lifelong learning, and for some people it is really important. For others, it's not. It doesn't really bother me what I'm called, to be honest. But for others, it's really important, and it's just appreciating that. But thanks, Jane. That's made me feel a bit.
I also think as well, coming from a young person's point of view, I think they do. You talked about it not being political, but a lot of young people are political.
Yeah.
And they do bring it into the forum and say, this is happening, and I don't want it to happen, and I want it to stop. So it does become political quite easily.
Mm-hmm. I think the point I wanted to make was that I found my experiences, it can dominate everything. And that isn't good in my view. it is political, there's no question. And when we do need to act, and we do need to be vocal, and we do need to rise up. But I think my experience has been that if you're not careful, it can dominate everything, and from a minority, and that is not good. That's only my own experience.
My young person would particularly bring up what happened recently with that young person being killed.
Yeah.
They would say, I want something done about that, and what can be done. You know, it's really, really difficult to talk about an issue like that. What are we doing about that? Where's the evidence that we're doing something about that? Because regardless of what that person was a human being, was with feelings, and it pains me, it hurts me to hear that, regardless of who they are, their sexuality, that person was a person and had a life and a future, and it's very painful. And what are we doing about that? Where is the evidence that something is being done about that?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. And I mean, amazing response to the vigils. A number of our members went to the vigils in Leeds and other places, and obviously people feel very strongly about it. And you're absolutely right, Jane, that we do need to, you know, act, and we need to see that things are being done. And you know, we do need to comment, and I definitely would say we do. I'm not against that at all. And I think that, you know, we've posted on our sites about Bryony and very much and solidarity, and that's really important.
I mean, you know, like, again, coming from my young person, we have all these groups, all these forums, we've got everything, but is that just a tick box? You know, where are things happening to stop things happening, not just having a group here or a forum there, or pride here and a pride there. This is what you have, and this is it.
There is some great work being done. There is some great work being done by the police and the Hate Crime Alliance, and I think that I've held a meeting in Keighley about hate crime and how we can work together and how we can improve things, the reporting, and how the Hate Crime Alliance works, and certainly that kind of learning and education is important. The police have made lots of mistakes, but they are improving, and we have to work with them, and they are working hard. They're still making a lot of mistakes, but I think that they have to look at this case and say, well, why did it happen? How did it happen? And obviously, for us to understand that is important. And we could host another meeting about hate crime and work in the police, and how do we improve things generally. I don't know whether anybody else has got any suggestions about. I mean, we're overrunning now, so I hope that's okay. But obviously, it is an important topic.
Yes, definitely.
Finn, do you want to comment at all?
Speeches on Saturday, all of them, and a lot of young people in the community did stand up. Many of them had never spoken in public before, but they felt very strongly that they weren't being listened to properly, and that they're feeling a great deal of pain for being politicized as a community. You know, so I think, you know, all those 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that stood up on, you know, as a 52-year-old trans woman, you know, seeing that was extraordinary in today's, well, that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. And now these voices are, you know, being out there in public saying their thing. I really think it's important to listen to what they're saying. This is trans youth.
Here. Finn, do you want to say anything more?
I agree that trans youth have found their voice and are using their voice, but the media seems intent at the moment on silencing them and demonizing them, just like they're demonizing trans women at the moment, and the stereotypes and the language that they're using is almost identical to how lesbian and gay people were talked about in the 80s. And we need to stand united as a community to push back and say this is not okay and this is not true, and a lot of it is fear mongering, and part of that is being visible and being present in the city, and having a pride is a big key part of that. And I was totally feeling what Jane was saying about it being a learning curve, and where can I go to find that learning, and all of that, and we recognise that the support out there for wider families when a young person comes out is lacking, and we need to be doing better with it. And I know that, yeah, just stuff is growing, and yeah, and I hear what you're saying, David, about pride not being political, but as a trans person, it is very political for me right now, and that's not going to change anytime soon, because of how I am being talked about as an individual from a minoritized community. And we haven't even really talked about the intersectionality of if I'm a person of colour and I am, or if I'm disabled, and we haven't even talked about how important it is that those voices are amplified and put at the heart of why we are having a pride. Yeah, I wish we had a lot more time to talk, because I think this is a very exciting conversation, but also very nuanced, and we could spend all day. Well, I could anyway.
Can
No,
I
no,
just
it's
finish?
important.
Sorry, David, I'll just
Sorry,
finish.
go on.
I need to
Go on,
go.
Jane.
But my young person suggested I went to this gig of I didn't know that they were gay, and my husband and I went along to this this young person singing, and the whole of the audience were gay, and I wasn't aware of that. And how friendly they were, and how they made me feel so welcomed and helped me get to the front, and protected me, because my husband was lost somewhere over there. And I just wanted to say how friendly they were, and how I came away from there feeling incredibly protected and welcomed. And I didn't know any one of those people. So, you know.
And I think what comes out very clearly is, and I have had discussions with Zara and Tahir about it, we need more signposting where things help and support is. So we need more signposting on Bradford's websites and whatever. Where can you go? Where can you go if you are new, or you're discovering yourself, or you find you've got children who, you know, feel they're trans or whatever it is? Where do you go for help and support? And that is not easy to find.
Not at all. Not at all.
And therefore,
I've
that's
not been able to
basis
talk to anybody about. Well, yeah, I think you're the first people I've really.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, like Finn says, and very much we would welcome it to have more sessions to talk about training and to talk about understanding. And that needs to regularly happen. And maybe at Bradford Equity Partnership need to look at that, hosting things for us to learn and educate and have some discussions of, as you say, Finn. So that's certainly come out. Right.
Yeah,
I will.
I mean, we've got all the youth groups, and we're in the process of setting up a support group for parents and carers of young people who have come out. And we also have, like, if you're an LGBT person who is a parent, come and hang out with other parents of children, and meet, and just starting connecting and finding community. Yeah, as well as all our older groups and all our other groups that we have going on. But those I want to highlight in particular. We have them all meeting in our community centre.
Thank you. That's really kind. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're at end. I mean, I hear all the stuff about political, and I don't disagree. It's just that my experience has been that sometimes people will put it on the table all the time about, you know, the Labour Party politics, and that's all they talk about. It is not about specific issues that are important to our community. It is just about bringing those politics onto the table. That's what I really mean. I'm sorry if that's confusing, but it is about issues that affect our community to hold on to and work with and promote, and that's when it does become political. So does that explain that, Finn?
Yep. I think yeah, you were saying it shouldn't be party political, but actually Pride is political, has always been political. It, you know, and until we have true equality, it's going to stay political, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're at an end, Zara. So if we need to keep in touch, this group, and send everybody a sort of summary if we can, maybe, and all the people's comments and in the chat, I think it would be useful. Do you not agree? So I think we're at an end. Is that okay?
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
It's been a brilliant session. Just to let people know before you leave that in the chat as well, I've put in the links for the other two events. So we've got one on the 24th, which is the end of this week, and that's really focusing on the plus for the LGBT. And then the other one is around Make Sure It Adds Up, which is on the Monday, and that's really tackling rumours. So those if you'd like to join and you're able to join, please do click on the link and join them. Thank you, and also just at the end as well, the recording will be available for people to access again, including the chat. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Will you send me a copy of the chats that everybody made? I'd be grateful. Thank you, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Bye.
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 Bye.